part of my presentation. You have to be prepared for anything.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, yes, good afternoon, you all. Welcome to the LinkedIn Live here, where we will deep dive into the power of behavioral skills for startup success. How are you guys? Comment in the comment section so we know where have you joined from and how are you doing today. So, whether you are an aspiring founder, passionate entrepreneur, or a business leader, mastering critical business skills was never more important. As in today's startup landscape, technical expertise and brilliant ideas are only half the equation. That's why we have brought together two renowned experts to guide us on this journey. Meet Professor Dhruv Nath. He's an angel investor, mentor, and author of the critically acclaimed books, The Dream Founder and Funding Your Startup. And our very own Dr. Nivedita Srivastava, principal consultant and founder of Nine Links. She is a passionate founder with 21 years of experience who builds scientific and innovative solutions around psychometric assessments. A warm welcome to you both. How are you guys doing today?
Doing
Fine.
well.
You didn't mention I have 45 years.
Oh, sir. You are 25 years old, sir.
No, I have 45 years of experience.
You have 45 years of experience.
Yeah,
Oh,
I have
so
more
this is
experience
the
than
first
the age
time we
of
are
most.
meeting, right?
I have more experience than the age of most people on this show.
Wow, right, obviously, yes. Yes,
It's an
sure,
honor.
that
It's
is
an
true.
honor.
Yes,
Sure.
it is an honor to have you here and speak with the aspiring founders and business leaders and share your experience with them and share your journey with them as well, so that they get the idea of what all caps the entrepreneurs wear. I'm also a founder, so I'll be also be very keen to hear this from you. The tips from you, basically. Okay, great. So I'll not let the audience wait so that you guys can speak. So, dear audience, are you guys ready to polish your behavioral skills? So, let's go. So, remember, questions are encouraged and will be addressed at the end of the session. Okay, so we'll be waiting for your comments and as well as questions while I am backstage. Over to you, Nivedita.
Thank you, Arwa. Thank you. A very warm welcome to you, Professor Nath here, and thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining us on this LinkedIn event. We, as an organization, just starting from the basics in terms of introduction, and maybe talking more about the organization, just to brief, So the very name Nine Links is basically built upon a premise that we believe in a 3x3 matrix, which is into working with corporates, working with education institutes, and the third segment is research. So as part of research, we have been engaging into various on various forums to bring out new concepts, to deep dive into new concepts, and to enlighten the audience and fellow colleagues in this endeavor. So these LinkedIn live sessions are more of our end of a part of this endeavor to spread knowledge, to share knowledge with a wider audience. So thank you so much for joining us here. So while we definitely would be deep diving into the whole concepts of what behavioral skills, and I'm sure you would agree that entrepreneurs are beyond leadership skills. Entrepreneur skills are beyond leadership skills. Now here we would want to hear from you as an expert out here, as an angel investor, as a researcher who's been kind of experimenting with a lot of startups, investing into them, working with them day in and day out. I'm sure you would bring a tremendous extent of knowledge as to what behavioral skills should an entrepreneur hold, which will lead to a successful startup and lead to a profitable business, because at the end of the day we all aspire for a profitable business, right? But I'm sure, as Arwa was just mentioning earlier as well, that besides the technical know-how, what other skills do you think would help an entrepreneur lead to a successful startup, and not only a profitable business but also into a brand building exercise? Because at the end of the day we also want to establish a brand which kind of establishes a mark in, in the industry, for any industry that we work with, right? So here, over to you, Professor Nath, and we are all ears to hear from you. And I'm sure at the end of your presentation, we would also, kind of engage with into a deeper conversation with various other things that we want to discuss. Professor
Mm,
Nath,
I'm okay. Thank you, Nivedita, and it's great to be here with. I'm assuming there are young people on this on this in this session. So what I will do is, so first of all, I agree with you. I would imagine behavioral skills are probably far more important than tech skills. In fact, I've seen founders who had wonderful startups, but they failed simply because they were largely tech guys, right? They didn't know how to sell, they didn't understand business, they didn't know how to interact with people, and that was the end of these startups. So I'll do is I'll just share a presentation and share with you a few stories because I think people can learn from stories. So how do I now just hold? Yeah, okay. I presume this is the second one. Okay, Arwa, the second one. Oops. No, 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 don't. Okay, just leave it there. Yeah. Okay. So, I'll just go a step back. I think skills are one thing, but even before that, there is something that I would like to call attitude, right? And I have found in my 12 to 15 years of experience in dealing with a lot of founders of startups, I have found that attitude makes all the difference. And I'll share with you some stories and let's see what we can learn from them. Okay. So I think you have put up the wrong one. Just hold on. Yeah. Hopefully this will work. Put up the number two. The file name is no animation because I'm clicking on that and I'm not. Can you remove the first one because it's very confusing right now? There are two PPTs. No, 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 no. Can you remove the first one that I uploaded?
Arwa, you on mute, please.
Yeah, Arwa, please. Just remove one or tell me which.
Yeah,
I have
I'll
two.
remove that.
Yeah, please.
Can you please check that this one is this one the right one?
Just let me check. Let me check. Yeah, I think this is the right one. Yes.
Perfect. Perfect.
So I must, I must, let me take this example. Um, One of the things that founders need to have is the ability to deal with absolutely anything that comes their way, right? In a business, you just don't know what's going to happen. You can have COVID, you can have demonetization, you can have the global financial crisis, you can have the Ukraine war. Anything can happen, and you have to have the ability to deal with it, right? And that's an attitude, that's a skill. This is what happened to me just now. I logged on about, I think, 10 minutes ago. And, in my presentations, I like to have a lot of animation and wonderful. I could see my PPT over here, but suddenly I realized there was no animation. Why? Because this platform that you're watching this thing on does not support animation. I had 9 minutes. In those 9 minutes, I had to modify my presentation so that I bring in what I would call jugadu animation, and that's what you see now, right? So it's an example of what can hit you. Anything can happen. You have to be prepared to react, right? You can't suddenly sit back and say, "No, my God, I can't do it. I back out." You have to go ahead. Okay. So let me now share this presentation with you. In this book, by the way, this is the book. You have two books here. The bottom one, The Dream Founder, is the one I'm talking about. So in this book, what I've done basically is I've tried to look at all these startups that I have dealt with, and I must have dealt with over 200 in the past 10 odd years as a mentor as well as a investor. I've realized that what is very, very important, I told you, is attitude. And within attitude, there are a few factors, there are a few components of attitude which become extremely important. And I've just listed them down here. And I call this the perfect attitude of a founder, right? And each letter of this acronym perfect stands for something, and you can see that here. So P is persevering, E is ethical, R is responsible, F is flexible, E is willing to do everything, C is customer oriented, and T is builds trust. Okay. And what I'll try and do is I will try and share with you a few stories and link it back to this perfect attitude, because this is something which I find goes a long, long way in making founders successful. So let me start with the first story. This is a company that I had invested in about 4 years back. Okay, just before COVID. It's called Planet Spark. What they realized was that if you look at the business of tuition centers, they're very, very unorganized, right? You may go to the house of the tutor and you'll be sitting at the dining table along with two, three other kids, and the pressure cooker in the kitchen would start screaming, and the cook starts fighting with the maid, and the phone keeps buzzing. So it's very, very distracting. Plus, you don't know what kind of quality you're getting, right? So they said, okay, can we convert this into a very organized business? So they created branded tuition centers, very nice rooms. In fact, they had tied up with Oyo rooms. And so they had um, digital content, which means they had laptops and they had created a lot of digital content for science and English, for these two subjects. And also they had workbooks and they had a mentor. So kids would come, spend an hour, hour and a half, go through all that stuff on the laptop, be happy because it was animated learning, digital learning, and so on. And they would go back home and they were happy, they were learning. All right, wonderful. We invested in them. Then what happened? All of you know what happened in March 2020, COVID, right? Now, suddenly, COVID hit us. There was a lockdown. Kids were not going to school for a year, year and a half. Kids were not going to school. Why the hell would they go to a tuition center? There's no way, isn't it? So, therefore, their business absolutely collapsed. Right? But these were very smart guys. What they did was they said, okay, let us pivot. Okay. When I say pivot, I mean let us change the business model. We already have a lot of content, which is, kids are accessing on the laptop. Instead, we will put up all this content on the internet. So they're sitting at home. Through the internet, they access this content. And the mentor is also available online. And therefore, we basically transplant the physical OYO rooms room, the learning center, the tuition center, into a virtual learning center, right? Wonderful. It should have worked. Okay. What's the problem? The problem is they were competing with giants in the field. Okay. You heard of Byju's, you heard of Vedantu, you heard of Unacademy, you heard lots of these guys. Right? So the problem is here you have a small little startup called Planet Spark, which is offering exactly the same thing as the huge giants like Byju's and Vedantu and Co. They can't compete. There is no way they can compete. And fortunately, the founders were smart. They realized this. So they said, okay, let us pivot again. We will, instead of looking at curriculum, we will look at extracurricular learning. So they tried programming, they tried music, they tried painting, they tried robotics, they tried dance. Nothing worked. Absolutely nothing worked. And by the way, you must realize as investors, our blood pressure was going gradually higher and higher and higher, because suddenly all the money we had put in into this company, we didn't know what the hell was happening to it, because the business just wouldn't function, right? Nothing worked. But the important thing is these guys kept persevering. They kept pivoting and trying different extracurricular stuff that they could cover in this. And finally, they hit one thing which worked. And let me explain what that one thing is. You know, if you look at parents when they send their kids, I'm talking of young kids, right? Maybe class 2 to about class 8 or 9. Right? If you look at parents, obviously the one thing they want is for their children to do well academically, right? Which means get good marks. Perfect. But that's not all you need. What you also need is confidence. What you also need is the ability to speak to people. What you need is the ability to face a crowd and maybe make a presentation, right? Because that is something which sets you apart. Lots of people get good marks, but people who are able to do the second thing are the ones who really stand out and become successful. So what they did was they said, okay, we will offer public speaking for children. And this absolutely boomed, right? Because suddenly parents said, my God, this is what we were looking for and we didn't have it. Yeah? The other issue is curriculum was an Indian market. Public speaking is a global market because there is no curriculum, right? You're not restricted to ICSE or CBSE or whatever, right? So suddenly the market became much bigger. And by the way, look at the success that these guys have had. Today, they are a 100 crore business in about 5 years. Okay. And they're almost profitable. I think in 2, 3 months, they will become profitable. They got funded about 3, 4 times, and from the first round of funding to the last round of funding, the valuation of the company has gone up 150 times, and that's almost a world record. Okay, phenomenally successful, doing extremely well. But I think the important thing is, I'll take you back to my perfect attitude, the model I shared. They were flexible, they kept trying multiple things, and they were persevering, which means I will keep trying, I'll keep trying, I won't give up. Okay, so that's the story of Planet Spark. Let me take the next story. This is a startup that see, I'm a part of Lead Angels Network. We fund startups. So Lead Angels has funded this, although I did not participate. I was not in this. So this is a company called Go Desi, and I suspect you people have tried their products. The founder is a young man called Vinay Kothari. So this guy is a. So I'll give you a story. By the way, these stories are from the book. So if you want to read these stories in greater detail and maybe read more about more stories, you're welcome to pick up a copy of the book. So this guy he's based in Bangalore and he's a trekker. He likes to go on treks. So he was on a trek somewhere in rural Karnataka, and he came to one kirana shop, okay, where he found some very very interesting lollipops, candies, lollipops, right? um, and these were candies with Indian flavors. So they were not, the kind of flavors that you have in the Western world, which is vanilla and strawberry and lemon and so on. No, they were Indian flavors like kacha aam, okay, imli, tamarind, right, kathal, jackfruit, right? These are flavors which you will never get in the Western world. So he found these and he found them very, very tasty and they were healthy. There was no sugar, there was only good or jaggery, which means A, it is tasty, B, it is unique, C, it is healthy. Right? So he said, hang on, this is some local guy, there was some local farmer who's producing it in a small shed next to his house. He says, can I transform this into a major business? Okay. So what did he do? He said, okay, he actually converted this into a large business. So he tied up with multiple farmers. Each farmer would grow the fruit, whether it is imli or kathal or mango or whatever. And Go Desi did the branding, distribution, quality control, processes, etc. online and offline. Okay, and you may have tried some of their products. So there's Desi Pops, there's Desi Mints, there's Desi Meetha, there's also, I think, Desi Chaat. So there are many of these products, and they're doing phenomenally well. So online today, these guys are the fastest growing confectionery brand on Amazon, right? But they were selling online as well as offline. So now the key question is, if you look at the offline part first, I just want to talk about that part. How did Vinay market the product? You know what he did? He went around across Bangalore and other towns in Karnataka, and he said, I will personally meet Kirana shop owners and I will deliver this product to them. And you know how he actually went on his, he didn't own a two wheeler, he didn't have money. Obviously, founders don't have money. So he borrowed his sister's two wheeler and he said, okay, I will deliver it personally. Why? Very important. Number one, I, as the founder, will meet the Kirana shop owner, which is my customer, right? I will understand his thinking. I will understand whether he likes this or not. I'll get feedback from him. And very, very important, I will use this to train my team. Because if I haven't experienced how I need to sell to Kirana shop owners, how the hell can I train my team? Isn't it? So, for multiple reasons, he said, I will do it. Okay. And it worked very, very well. You know, the other issue you must remember is founders must set an example. You can't sit in an ivory tower and say, boss, I'm giving you instructions, please go and do it. No, show the way yourself. All right, set an example. And they may be dirty jobs that you don't want to do. And I'll take one more example after this. Prove that, show the fact that nothing is below your dignity, because that's the only way you can get your team to do it. Okay, so just to summarize, a, this guy was highly customer oriented. He said, I will meet my customer personally. B, he was willing to do everything. And C, in the process, since you're willing to do everything, you build trust in your team. The team trusts you. So you are not a manager who's throwing his weight around and saying, you do this, you do this, you do. No, I am the guy who's doing it, and I am expecting you to do what I am doing. It builds trust in the team. That's very, very important for any team. Okay, a similar story. How much time do I have, Nivedita? I
So
will.
I think you could we have got another 10 minutes for the
Oh,
presentation.
wonderful,
Absolutely
wonderful,
okay. Yeah.
wonderful. Okay, so one more story. This is actually not from a startup, but I had to share the story because I mean it's one of my favorite stories. So there is a one of the biggest multinationals in the country, and I don't want to name them. So they had a branch manager, and one young, fresh MBA from one of the IMs joined this company, and he reported to the branch manager. Okay, and the branch manager said, "Okay, um, so this is your first assignment. What you do is, go to the stores. It is next door, and there is a bunch of posters which talk about our products, and also ask for one bucket of glue and a brush, and pick up that bucket of glue and the brush, take the posters, go to this area and keep putting up these posters on the walls." Okay, so this guy, the MBA from one of the IMs, he says, sir, this is not my job. I'm an MBA from one of the IMs. I mean, prestigious. Look, this is not what I have come for. Anybody can do this. So the branch manager said, okay. And he gave him some other assignment. He said, okay, you go to Kirana shops, talk to the Kirana shop owner, and, get feedback from him about how our products are doing. And this MBA said, yes, that is fine. That I can do. So the MBA went off and he started meeting Kirana shop owners. But every Kirana shop that he went to, he noticed some distance away there was a man who was putting up posters, putting glue on the walls of wherever, toilets or whatever, and sticking those posters up. So every time this guy would move to the next kirana shop, that man would follow him and again put up these things. And this guy, the IM MBA was wondering who this man was. So he walked up to him, and guess who that man was? The same branch manager. Okay. And this MBA, he apologized, sir, I'm so sorry. Sir, please give me the bucket, give me the posters, I will do it. Okay. Why? Why was that branch manager doing it? Because, you know, ultimately somebody has to do it, right? If you sit in your ivory tower and instruct those office boys to go and put up posters, A, they may put it up in the wrong place. B, they may put it up, may put up too many posters close by, so it's a waste of money. Or they may put up the posters too far apart, in which case, the person who's looking at these posters forgets by the time he's gone to the next poster, or they put it up in a place where it's not even visible, right? He has to give those office boys instructions on where this has to be done, and the only way he can do it is if he has experienced it himself, right? So once again, customer oriented, willingness to do everything, and that's the only way you build trust in your team. Please remember, as a founder, if I will keep repeating this, if you sit in an ivory tower and give instruction, then you haven't done it yourself. Boss, you will never get respect. And you won't get respect, you will not get your team to do it. Okay? Next. Very, very interesting. This is one of my favorite founders. And by the way, this is not a tiny startup, it's a market leader. It's InfoEdge, which is better known by its biggest component, which is Naukri.com. And I'm sure you've heard of Naukri.com. Now, uh, the founder of Naukri.com, Sanjeev Bikhchandani, he was asked to be a director, which means director on the board of Make My Trip, which is another very, very successful company, right? And when you are offered this kind of board seat, when you're asked to be a director, you are normally paid, right? Either you get money or you get ESOPs. So you get paid in some form. And Sanjeev was offered by Make My Trip, he was offered ESOPs because he would be spending time there. You know what Sanjeev did? And by the way, this is coming in my next book. What Sanjeev did was he says, okay, I will take the ESOPs, I will become a director on your board, but guess what? I will not, oops, sorry, I will not take the ESOPs in my name. I will take them in the name of InfoEdge. So I don't personally benefit. The shares are now in the name of the company, my company. Why? Because when I spend time in board meetings with Make My Trip, that's not my personal time. That is time that belongs to InfoEdge, my company. And therefore, I should not benefit, my company should benefit. So he took the shares in the name of InfoEdge. Later on, I think those shares were sold, and his company, which is InfoEdge, benefited. So all the stakeholders, shareholders, employees, everybody in InfoEdge benefited. Sanjeev did not benefit personally. Now, you know, this is such a glaring example, and I keep sharing this. This is what? This is, I would say, this is ethics, right? Just hold on. Yeah, this is ethics. You're being fair, you're being ethical. You're not, you're working for the company. Yes, he was the founder, but he's still working for the company. You're not using company time to make a personal profit. You're saying, if I'm doing something, it has to benefit the company. That's ethics, very strong ethics. And when you're ethical, that builds trust. Okay, it builds trust in your team, it builds trust in your partners, it builds trust in your customers, everybody who deals with you, and that's the only way to be, right? So that's Sanjeev Bikhchandani, and I think I had a slide which was summarizing this. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So basically, I would like to just summarize here. If you're a founder, I think the key thing that you have to keep in mind is attitude. Be persevering, Uh, don't give up, because you'll have all kinds of things coming your way. Be flexible, F for flexible, because you'll have to keep pivoting. And I've shared with you one example. Of course, many more are possible. Be very, very, very ethical. That's the only way you can build trust in people. Be responsible. I haven't spoken about that yet, which means if something goes wrong, don't find somebody to take the blame. You're responsible. If something goes right, share the credit with the others, right? And of course, be customer oriented, because ultimately it's the customer's money which will keep you afloat. And finally, you must be willing to do everything, right? So if you have these, you are what is called the perfect founder. You have the perfect attitude. I must Before I wind up, I must tell you that this acronym, the perfect attitude, was finalized in one meeting between me and Sanjeev Bikhchandani, where I shared this, he gave his feedback, then I shared my views and so on. So effectively it is me and Sanjeev which has put this together. Okay, so I come to the end of this these slides, and now I guess Nivedita, you'll have questions.
Sure, I do have some. I'm sure the more than one. So after the intriguing
Right.
presentation that you just made, so
Okay,
Professor Nath, yes, sure.
before you start, so in case you guys want to get in touch with me, because I am a mentor as well as a investor. I may not invest, but I do mentor people. You're welcome to get in touch with me on LinkedIn. I can't mentor everybody, because if I do that, my wife will divorce me, and at this age, I can't get a new wife. I can't even get an old one. So therefore, I mean, I've selected, but you're welcome to contact me on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. I'm sure our audience would be more than happy to connect with you, and I'm sure they would be looking forward to receiving your feedback or your comments on their startups and entrepreneurs. So, Professor Nath, something that really kind of interested me, and as an entrepreneur myself, and been running this business for a while now, in various, of course, capacities. So, something that really interested me was one of the points that you had was willingness to do everything.
Mhm.
So something that I would want to understand that often I come up this across this challenge, and I'm sure there must be fellow entrepreneurs as well. How do you draw that perfect mixture or mix of willingness to do everything all by yourself and delegating it to your team members? How do you kind of come up to the right mixture? Where do you decide that this is something that you should be doing all by yourself? This is something where you should delegate and maybe trust your team members for doing it effectively. So I think because right, of course, maybe I also often refer to myself as chairman to C2C, which is chairman to right, somebody who's kind of doing everything, a one man army as many a times, right? So would want to hear from you as to how does an entrepreneur or a founder decide to draw the right mix of doing it yourself and delegation.
Okay, very good. So it's a very valid issue you've raised, Nivedita. First of all, I agree with you 400%. It is not possible for the founder to do everything. It's just not possible. I mean, if you're running a company, if it's a small, tiny little shop, one man show, you can. But if it's anything bigger than that, as it is growing, there's no way. You have to have people. And you cannot say, I will do anything, you will die. And therefore, the company will die. What I meant was not the fact that you have to do everything, you have to be willing to do everything. You have to show that example, right? You have to set an example. So I'll take an example here. um, Again, I'll take the example from Naukri.com, right? When these guys started, right, they were see, they're basically in the business of companies that put up ads on their portal, on their Naukri.com portal, and their customers who are clients, companies which want to employ people, they put up ads on the portal, and therefore people who want jobs apply against these ads, right? That's the way it works. When they started, this was in the late 90s, so I'm talking of about almost 30 years ago, right? 25 years back. When they started, people were not familiar with how to use the internet. Correct? Customers were not familiar. And somebody had to explain to them, look, this is how it will work, right? And that was very much a part of the sales process. You couldn't go and sell the concept of, look, put up your ad on the on our portal, and people will apply. No, it wouldn't work because people didn't know how it would work. So they had to go and explain as part of the sales process. What these guys did was they said, okay, rather than saying we will sit in our head office, I'm talking about the founders, rather than saying we will sit in the head office and tell people, please go and sell and explain, we will go ourselves, take our people along with us, our sales guys, they will watch us doing it. They will see how we explain this process. They will see what it means to sell. We'll do that a few times, train these guys, and then get them to sell on their own. So essentially, rather than just giving instructions, I will demonstrate how it has to be done as the founder, right? After which, obviously, I have to delegate, right? So yes, it has to be a combination of I must do it, I must be willing to do it, but I must also train up my guys to be able to do it because I can't do everything. What mix there should be? I think it's it really depends on the business. So if you're in a consulting kind of business, I would imagine the founders have to do most of the selling. There is no choice, right? If it is a business where you're selling a simple product, then the founder shows the way, but ultimately the team has to do it. So I think the mix will really depend on what the product is, what the service is, what the offering is.
Sure. Got that. Sure. I'm sure we have amongst our audience, I'm sure we would have a lot of students, right, who might be graduating in the coming years. And we've been witnessing a surge of startups in the last 2 decades, like
Mm,
never before, right? How does one really realize that they have it in them to be an entrepreneur, at that stage when they are probably just building up their careers, they're just kind of graduating, right? How do they realize that yes, they have it in them? Because I'm sure you would agree that entrepreneurship is not everybody's cup of tea. We all,
correct. Valid.
individually different. We all have our own set of experiences. We all have our own mental, makeups, right? And we all have our different personality sets, right? So
Valid.
how does somebody who's preparing or planning to start up, right?
Okay.
Should they realize that they have it in them to be an entrepreneur?
Right. Okay, very good question again. You're asking very good questions, by the way.
Thank you.
As a professor, as an ex-professor, I always keep saying that.
I'm sure then in your class, had I been a student, you would have given me an A grade at least.
Okay. Yeah. So I agree with you. It's not for everybody. I think there are two, three things. There are many things, but I'll just take the top two, three. That these are questions that each person has to ask himself or herself before jumping into this. Number one, please remember, if you're becoming an entrepreneur, if you're starting something on your own, your purpose is not to make money. That's a I would say, a subordinate purpose. Your purpose is, there is something which you believe very, very strongly in, and you want to make that happen, right? In the process, you learn money, right? So for instance, if you go back to let's say Planet Spark today, as founders, their purpose is, can we get young kids to a position where they can speak in public and therefore face the world? That's a passion that they have, right? You look at the other one, which is Go Desi. Can we give healthy sweets to the entire country, right? Which is Go Desi, right? Um, or you look at even a guy like, say, Make My Trip. Can we make it far, far easier for people to book their trips, their holidays, their hotels, their taxis, their flights, and so on and so forth, right? That's a passion. So I think very, very important, and I would say that is the first thing. By the way, that's also what investors look for. The first thing you need to do is, you need to figure out what your passion in life is, and you follow that passion, right? So your passion could be, uh, your passion could simply be as simple as, I want to get fresh, healthy, standard quality meat to people. That's my passion, right? And you have this company called, I forget the name. They What's the name? One is, um, what is the name of the company which sells fresh meat online, meat and seafood?
Licious. Are you talking
Sorry,
about Licious? Licious?
Lich. Exactly, exactly. Okay, so you're obviously a meat eater. So yes, that's their passion. So first of all, you must be passionate about something, and whatever you create has to be a business around that passion. And there's a very simple reason for that. If you're passionate, you will keep on and on and on at it. There will be roadblocks along the way. You'll have funding problems. You'll have problems where you have competition. People will leave you. Regulators will come in and say, "Look, you can't do this." All kinds of problems you'll have, but if you are passionate, you will figure out a way to do it. You'll be persistent, you'll be persevering, which I told you is the first part of that perfect attitude. Right? So you have to be passionate about something, chase a business in that area. If you're only passionate about making money, sorry, don't get into this. I mean, you have to be passionate about something and build a business around that. Second thing is, you have to be willing to take risks. It's very important because, obviously, if you have a job, at the end of the month you get your salary, right? Whereas in this kind of thing, for several months, in fact, many founders I know have not been taking a salary initially because they can't afford it. The company, Sanjeev Bikhchandani, when he started his company, did not take a salary. In fact, twice for long periods. So you have to be willing to take a risk. You have to be willing to. You must realize that things will go down. There will be problems. In COVID times, lots of businesses just collapsed. The founders who were willing to ride through this are the ones who succeeded. The founders who sat back and said, "My God, they are not founders anymore. Their businesses have died." Right? So you have to have the willingness to take risks. You have to have the willingness to persevere. You have to have the, I would say, the gumption. I'll go on, I'll keep on and on and on and on at it, even if there are problems. So, and I think this is something which each person has to figure out for himself. If you have these things, you have a good chance of succeeding. Obviously, there is no guarantee, nobody can guarantee success, but these are a few things which you must have.
Sure. Right. I think before we, open the floor for the audience to ask their questions, I have just one last question. So, what is your thought on, or maybe to understand more from you as to, uh, what is the process and having your views on that? We often see corporates investing into a lot of assessment centers,
Yeah.
wherein they invest into identifying the right leaders, whether it is through, through internal hirings, right, or through it, through search agencies, right, investing into a lot of assessment centers where they have seats.
Yes. Yes.
What is your take, and also as to what is your experience of venture capitalists, angel investors, right, investing into identifying the right skill sets, or the right founder where they should be investing into, the process which they invest into, which is over and above the business plan, right?
Okay.
So, of course, a business plan is definitely a major, uh, you know, I would rather say a major perspective or major, point to, of course, evaluate the success of a startup. But I'm sure it, as we've been discussing for the past 45 minutes, that it takes more than just the business plan, right? So, how have been angel investors and venture capitalists, and how should they actually deal into that?
Okay. So, firstly, I agree with you. I think it's very very useful, and I'll share personal experience. Right. Before I became a professor at MDI, so I was at MDI for about 19 years. Before that, I was in the IT industry, the software industry, for about 20 years. I was a consultant and I was managing large teams. Now, we very extensively used such assessment tests very extensively, right? And I'm talking of about maybe 20, 25 years back, right? So there was one very interesting test. I think it was called MAT, Management Aptitude Test, or or something of that sort, right? And that would give you the psychological, behavioral kind of mental makeup that a person had, right? And that is something which we couldn't discover in normal interviews, right? Because for example, I was an IT person, right? I was a manager. I didn't know all this, and that would give phenomenal insights, very good insights. I'll just take one simple example within this management aptitude test, and maybe you could share that with me because I've been trying to find it. I haven't been able to find it since I left the industry. There was one score. They had multiple scores on various parameters, and there was one parameter called deserter. And that desert, they said, look, the deserter score of any candidate, if you're taking him for a senior position, has to be less than ideally 4 or 5, right? I have seen that. I've seen people, we were desperate to take people because the IT industry was growing and, people were hopping around from job to job. We were very often desperate to take people. I have taken on people who had deserter scores of 7 or 8 or 9. Okay. And I have regretted it because a deserter, what I've understood is a deserter typically passes the blame on to somebody else. If something goes wrong, oh, I didn't do anything, that guy, oh no, that's his problem. And you cannot have that. You cannot have that in a leader. You cannot have that in a founder. So when you're talking of companies which have do use these assessment tests, I think it's very important because at a glance it tells you what the strong areas, yes, it also tells you what the weak areas are and what the no areas are. If the deserter score is beyond 6, no way you can put money into this guy, whether you're employing him or whether you are investing him in as a founder. Because the founder has to take, I go back to my perfect attitude, you have to take responsibility. If something has gone wrong, you can't say, this is my team member. He messed it up. No, you're responsible. So I think it's very, very important to go through these, and I would say this would be a boon for both investors as well as leadership in companies.
Sure. Okay, great. Okay, that's really very insightful, and I'm glad that we connect on a lot of parameters altogether. Sure. So I we would like to open the floor for, so maybe Arwa, you could take up the questions, and I'm sure.
So
Arwa.
all the tough questions, I'll pass on to Nivedita. I'll take the easy.
Hmm. So I think most of the questions are for you, Professor
Okay.
Dhruv.
Okay.
So, okay, it has been a very insightful session, and our audience has been loving the session all through. I'll just start asking the questions from the audience.
Mhm.
So, Pranav is asking that you have mentioned attitude in the beginning. How can founders strike a balance between maintaining a positive attitude and being realistic about the challenges they face?
Um, so I don't think these are against each other. I think they go together, right? When I say positive attitude, when I say attitude, by the way, attitude does not, it's not only positive attitude, it's attitude. It's multiple things within attitude, which I shared. You're, when you're facing a challenge, right? For example, you saw the instance of these guys, um, Planet Spark, right? The founders of Planet Spark. They could easily have said, when COVID hit them, they could easily have said, Mar gaya. Okay, I can't do anything. So what I will do is, till this damned virus goes away, all I will do is watch serials on Netflix and maybe play video game and curse the hell out of Wuhan in China. Right? That's one attitude. Give up. But I'm saying the positive attitude here is, yes, this is a problem. I have to do something about it, and let me figure out what to do about it. It may not succeed. I told you they tried 7 or 8 things, they didn't succeed. So when I say positive attitude, it doesn't mean that you are not aware of, you do not look at constraints, you do not look at crisis. Yes, there are crises, but a positive attitude means what can I do to overcome this crisis. I think that's what you need to do. So I would say they go hand in hand. In fact, your attitude really comes out when you face a challenge, right? When demonetization happened. So by the way, when demonetization happened, a lot of companies which depended on cash, where the customers paid in cash, they had a problem. You have to figure out what to do about it. That's your attitude.
Right, right, right. We have one more question related to that only. Partly you have answered that question, but I'll bring that up. Kashish is asking, during challenging times, how do founders balance their passion and vision for the company with the need to pivot or adapt based on market demands and trends?
So okay, so let me explain. So first of all, these go hand in hand again. Because you're passionate about it, you want to figure out a way to make it work, right? And therefore you will make it work. So let me take a couple of other examples. In fact, let me take one more example. um, let's see, which example do I okay, let me take the example of Naukri itself, right? These guys were passionate about the founders. There were two founders, Sanjeev and there was Hitesh Oberoi. They were very, very passionate about uh, making, matchmaking between successful matchmaking between employers and potential employees. They were very passionate about that, and of course, on the internet. When they started off, they were only into advertising, but they realized advertising by itself was not doing too well, right? The business wasn't doing too well, it wasn't growing so much. What they realized was that founders would say, can you give us a database of employers? Can we access the database directly? And therefore figure out which of these potential employees will suit us. So rather than us advertising and people applying, we will directly access the database of employees that you have. These guys realized that that was a potentially that could actually change the nature of the business, and they did that, right? It is still the same business, it is still matchmaking, the passion remains, but they figured out a different way to do it. And today, that database, which by the way is called resdex, I think it is short for resume index, uh, that database forms about 70% of the revenues of Naukri.com. So if you're passionate, you will figure out market trends, you'll figure out what you need to do to change, and therefore you will make sure it happens. Yes, if you're not passionate, you'll give up and say, okay, maybe I need to, start supplying babies' diapers. Then you're not passionate about your business, right? So I would say being passionate means it includes the fact that you have to look at market trends and change accordingly. That's part of passion.
Right. I hope, Kashish, that answers your question. And definitely the example really worked. One more very important question that every founder faces after starting their own business is,
Mhm.
how do we identify co founders after initial launch for growing multifold? Satyarth
Mm.
is asking this question.
Very, very, very important. So, first of all, you must realize that ideally you should have a co founder. In fact, ideally, there should be a total of three founders. So, the ideal number is three. Two is okay. More than three is too much. One is tough. And just for the benefit of the others, the reason why you need to have a co-founder is number one, multiple skills. One could be a tech person, one could be great at business, one could be great at finance, one could be great at operations, right? One person cannot be good at everything. So that is number one. Number two, if you need to raise funds, it's almost a full-time job. So if you're raising funds full-time, who's running the business? There has to be somebody. Three is you should always, get somebody else's view rather than one person deciding everything. So there are multiple reasons why it's good to have a co-founder. It's a little like Amit Shah and Narendra Modi, right? I don't know if that's the right example, but they're not founders, but they're co-founders of the government. Okay, now how do you find a co-founder? I think the most important thing, and by the way, there are some stories in this book on how to find a co-founder and what you need to look for in the co-founder. Number one, the co-founder must ideally bring complementary skills. If two or three co-founders are all techies and nobody understands business, just forget it. It won't work. You have to bring in somebody who has complementary skills. Secondly, you have to have a common vision. So if there is one founder who says, "Look, I want to reach for the moon. I want to grow very, very rapidly," right? And the other guy is extremely conservative and says, "Look, no, 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 no. Let this stabilize first. We'll grow maybe 10%, 15% a year." It won't work. At some stage, they will branch off on their own. It won't. It just cannot work. Right? So you have to have a common vision, a common direction for the company. I think the most important thing is trust. You cannot be doing what you're doing as the founder and wondering whether your co-founder is siphoning off money. Then the business is gone, right? Trust is extremely important. I normally would say the ideal co-founder is somebody who you already know and you trust, and you know that you have different skills and so on. But if you don't, one good way is you must keep attending events. So there are a lot of, see, this is an online event, right? But there are a lot of physical events, and they happen in all major cities and also some smaller towns. You have events where you have lots of founders coming. You'll get in touch with people. You'll meet people. You may meet somebody who fits the bill. Spend time with him, because taking on a person too early. There is a saying we have in our industry: it is easier to get a divorce than to get rid of a co-founder.
Right.
Okay? I don't know if that's true, but I mean, there's a message in that. So that is one. Three is, uh, take a person who you think can become a co-founder ultimately, but take him on as a senior employee. Check him out. When I say him, it includes her, obviously. I have two ladies on this group. I am sorry. I am being, I'm probably using the wrong words. So take him on and let him work for some time, on the assumption that if things go well, he becomes a co-founder, which means at the end of the year, maybe you give him more ESOPs, still more ESOPs, give him maybe 10%, right? Then he becomes a co-founder. So there are multiple ways. One is people who you already know. Two is go around meeting people. In fact, there are many places where they have these physical matchmaking events where you can actually find other people who are looking for co-founders, right? And attend those events. And three is look for a senior employee who satisfies these requirements, which means he has complementary skills, similar vision for the company, etc., etc., etc. Take him on as an employee, and over time, maybe convert him into a co-founder.
Yes. Two more questions that we have. Abesh is asking. Yeah, before that, I think we have applications also to match the founders. Like Bumble, we have an application to match the co-founders. I do not remember the name now, but there are applications too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Don't go to
Abesh,
Tinder. Don't go to Tinder. That will not get you.
no, 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 not like Tinder. Yeah. An application, a dating app for founders, so that they
By
match.
the
I
way,
think you said now divorcing is easier.
I know. By the way, today is Valentine's Day, so you may have
Valentine's.
Yeah,
to
today is
join Tinder
Valentine's
too.
Day.
So
I hope
we
the
hope
audience gets a couple
founders find
co-founders. Hmm.
My
to,
my
yeah.
wife is waiting for me to come back. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So, Abesh is asking, maybe he's trying to ask that how to build an ability to motivate your team and the ability to sell and persuade or convince others.
Okay.
So, you
So
should
again,
also have that ability first, right?
oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would say the founder has to have that ability. I mean, before looking for a co-founder, you can't say I will delegate this to my co-founder. You have to have that ability. See, obviously that ability is there, has to be there. So I mean, I keep saying there are founders I have seen who are terrible at motivating people. There are founders I have seen who are pure techies and can do nothing else. There are founders I've seen who are very, very self-centered. It doesn't work. These things don't work, right? So yes, ability to motivate is extremely important. I would go one step beyond that. I would say not only should you have the ability to motivate people, which obviously you need to, but you should only take on those people who share your passion. Okay, and I'll give you an example. There is a very interesting company that I have been mentoring. It is called I Dream. I Dream, DREAM. And these guys are into, so they have, so their passion is, children in uh, underprivileged children, children who are not able to get the best of education, children who are typically in government schools, maybe in rural India, right? These are kids that they want to help, and that's their passion. And what they do, therefore, is they have created a lot of content in vernacular. Okay, so Hindi, I think Tamil, Telugu, and in multiple subjects. English, I don't know how you teach English in vernacular, but anyway, science, right? Maths, they have all these. And what they do is they created all this and they make it available on a tab. There is a lot of noise coming from somewhere. I don't know. Maybe somebody needs to mute. I don't know who that is. Yeah, thanks. So don't mute me, mute somebody else. Yeah. So, these guys have created a tablet, which is like an iPad, a low cost tablet, which is made available to these kids in rural schools. Now, they are very clear. When they take on anybody, when they recruit somebody, it has to be somebody who's not joining for money. No, obviously you need money, but that's not the primary purpose. You're not joining because you want to become a programmer. You are joining because you want to help kids who are underprivileged. That's your passion in life. So every employee that they take on ideally has to have that passion, and I've seen their employees, when they go and help these kids, they are not doing a job, they're actually playing with the kids, they're enjoying it, right? If you take on people like this who want to join your company because they like what you're doing, then the need to motivate becomes far, far lower, because there is some level of self motivation. Yes, you obviously need to add to that, but I'm saying it starts at the point where you're taking in people. So, a guy, where you're clear that you give him 20% more and he will leave. Sorry, somebody gives him 20% more and he'll leave. You don't want that kind of person. You want the kind of person who says, I like what you're doing, I'm part of the team.
Great. Yes. So just one more question from Rajat.
Sure.
So he says, "Thank you for your guidance. What are the typical time frames for finalizing funding needs?"
Okay. So first of all, I haven't talked about funding at all, because this was on
Yeah.
uh, assessment and attitude and behavioral skills and so on. Funding for a startup, first of all, you must realize today, for funding, you need some level of traction, some level of customers, some level of gross of revenues, right? And normally, one thumb rule that we use is you need an annualized gross margin of about 50 lakhs and growing, right? To interest investors, angel investors, I'm talking about. Once you apply for funding, from the time that you are shortlisted to make a presentation to the investors to the time you actually get the money, typically it is 3 to 4 months. Okay, but I must tell you, depending on the nature of your business, depending on how good your business is, how good a founder you are, etc., etc., it may take a long time to get shortlisted by the angel network for the funding. Therefore, you need to plan for time. But once you apply and you're shortlisted, from then till you get the money, 3 to 4 months.
Okay, great. So I think this has been all the questions. Our audience must be having more questions, but we are over 1 hour now. And I would really thank Professor Dhruv, sir, to be who has accepted our invite to join this LinkedIn Live. And thank you, Nivedita, for asking such beautiful questions so that our audience would be getting that passion and love. Yeah.
Please thank my wife because on Valentine's Day I'm taking a session and I don't know what she's doing inside.
So definitely, I think you should buy a gift for her this Valentine.
So she'll buy it herself.
No, sir, please. I request you to do that.
Okay, okay,
Being a woman, I would request you to do that. Okay.
okay.
So, big thank you to you both, Nivedita and Professor Dhruv, for
I think you're done.
giving valuable insights and strategies to help lead your startup to a new level, a new height. Um, what I've learned is that mastering behavioral skills is a continuous journey. So, guys, keep applying what you have learned, adapt, and grow as a leader. Don't forget to connect with our speakers on LinkedIn. You can find them on our page as well, and follow to view this live again. If you somebody mentioned that they have joined late. I think Sham said I joined lately. It's a real wisdom. So you can view this LinkedIn live later on our page as well. It will be there. You have to follow the Nine Links page, and you'll be able to see the whole session again. And for those who have lingering questions, there's still you can go ahead to the comment section, and we'll get back to you on that. Okay, and thank you for joining us today. Let's be passionate about
Sorry,
our startup and fall in love with our ideas this Valentine's
sorry,
Day. Until
sorry.
next
By
time, keep striving.
uh,
We would also like
Prof,
to thank, yeah, sorry.
yes,
So
sorry,
we
I
would also
also
like to,
I post a lot of these things on LinkedIn, so you're welcome
hmm.
to read those. That's free. You don't have to pay.
sure.
Okay, great.
We would also like to thank ACR Gujarat Electronics and Software Industries Association, who was a partner in this LinkedIn Live. So we also want to thank them and the members of KCR for joining in here. So thank you so much, Professor Nath.
Great.
It was a pleasure having you here, and we look forward to many more interactive sessions with you to enlighten and to share your knowledge and expertise with our fellow entrepreneurs and fellow professionals from the corporate sector.
Sure, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Have a good day and a happy Valentine's Day. A startup Valentine Day, I would say.
So, by the way,
Okay.
you will not have time for Valentine's Day if you have if you're a founder.
We are here. We all are here in the same boat. Okay, great. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.